Let's talk winter weather, specifically some snow averages. I'm 13 News meteorologist Matt Standers. Let's talk about when we first get our first 1 inch or more of snow. So we're not just talking about flurries flying around, but actually sticking to the ground, accumulating that inch. Let's explore the whole state. Indianapolis, right there in early to mid-December. December 8th is typically when we get that first average snow. There's a huge difference from north to south, partly due to temperature, but also really due to lake effect snow parameters. Once you get into northern Indiana, right there towards Michiana, that's in the lake effect snow belt. You can get colder air coming off the lake to produce some extra lake effect snow showers. That typically begins in November, in mid-November, a lot of times before Thanksgiving. You got to wait usually a little bit longer farther to the south. We're talking about maybe 1 inch of snow there towards Evansville and Vincennes, right there next to Christmas. Maybe a little bit before Christmas, a little bit after Christmas. That's typically your first 1 inch of snow. But most of central Indiana kind of meandering between early to mid-December. Let's talk about that last 1 inch of snow. So when do we get this 1 inch and then we're pretty much done? Now there could be some flurries afterwards and we'll track those. But when do we normally get our last kind of accumulating snow? A lot of times it's March for the northern half of Indiana. Indianapolis right there at March 1st. Southern half of Indiana, usually February. I mean, we can get snows in March, but typically we start to wrap things up in the month of November the farther to the south you go. And partially that's due to not just lake effect, but how much snowfall we actually get, how snowy it really is in northern Indiana. We're talking about over 60 inches many times for folks there in St. Joseph County, northern LaPorte County. It gets really snowy because of lake effect snow. And we quickly drop off how much snow we get. 25 inches or so in Indianapolis. Farther south you go, just a few inches, handful of inches. Big difference from north to south. We'll have to see how much we get this year, but the better chances of snow definitely are to the north. Let's chat about some winter weather. You think winter? You think snow. Of course, it's our snowiest season of the year with the colder temperatures. But how much snow do we typically get here in Indiana? There is a huge difference from north to south. You get into northern Indiana, right there in parts of St. Joseph County, northern LaPorte County, even northern Porter County, a lot of times we're talking 50 plus inches of snow, and we're talking about the average. Even in the white, that's South Bend, Elkhart, Michigan City, you getting close to the state line with Michigan, so Michiana, 60 plus inches of snow. That's the average. There are some winters where we get a little bit less, but there are some winters where we can get over 100 inches of snow. These lake effect snow bands, once you get that north or northwest wind, you get it to time right, you hit one town quickly with 1 to up to 5 inches of snow per hour. It can get crazy with some whiteout conditions. The intense lake effect snow bands start to fade there by Warsaw or so. Once you get into central Indiana, we can still get lake effect snow, but a lot of times it's a lot weaker. You can get maybe a couple inches in a good dose, but more scattered snow showers come in. And that helps to contribute why we don't get as much snow. Plus, it is typically warmer in central Indiana. But Indianapolis, average 25 inches. That dark blue, kind of royal blue color, at least 20 inches is what you're going to get. That includes Richmond and Muncie, all the northern suburbs of Indianapolis, from Carmel to Westfield to north to Lafayette. Once you get to IU, we're down in the 10-inch band. In southern Indiana, just a handful of inches. So a lot less once you get farther south. As it does get warmer, it's a little bit tougher to get some extra snow flurries from the lake effect snow bands once you get to southern Indiana. You've got to have just a direct north wind feeding down Lake Michigan in order to do that. I want to show you what it looks like for the lake effect snow coverage bands. You got to get close to lakes for the big snows, but Indiana, we're right on the edge.
13 weather meteorologist Sean Ash with a look at how we put together a forecast, or at least the timeline of winter storms here. And please know, if you're seeing snowfall maps 10 days out, take them with a grain of salt here. When we get within about 6 to 8 days of a particular situation, we will start to look at the overall pattern of a potential system. And then as we get into the 4 to 5 day range, we will start to look for consistency in the modeling and whether or not that's going to increase or decrease our confidence. And does the pattern itself make sense to what the models are showing? As we get into the 2 to 3 day window, we will begin preparing that forecast, give you a general idea of the precipitation type, the timing, the location, and possibly some totals as well. But you know, sometimes even within a 24-hour time period, we can see some dramatic changes to that forecast. And then once we get into the 24-hour window, we'll get into those specifics, okay? Exact timing, exact location, and the overall threat and the overall impacts to specific locations within our very big viewing area here. Now, you will hear us talk about the Winter Storm Severity Index. It's a little bit similar to when we're in severe weather season, the levels of risk. So a 1 provides very little inconveniences to your life, 2 minor inconveniences, and then as we go from 3 and get into 4, we're talking about major situations, and then 5 would be the extreme. Life-saving actions will be needed. Those are the big winter storms. Stay with us for more. And we're going to dive into wind chill and why that's important to you as we swing into the winter months here. Bottom line, it can be very dangerous depending on how cold the air temperature is and how strong the wind is. So you need to be thinking about the layers for you and your kids as you go out here. That will keep the heat into your body. But that wind, without the layers, can really cause the heat on your exposed skin to move away very quickly here. So when we get into situations where we're talking wind chill values of 10, 20 below, 30 below, that's when you really have to start considering limiting that outdoor time. Okay, hypothermia, frostbite can occur within minutes, depending on the situation. And if you do go outside, just cover up as much as you can here. All right, so that's, again, it's a combination, it's a function of temperature and the wind. The colder the air and the stronger the wind, that's what can create those dangerous wind chill conditions here. And so you can see, if you've got a wind speed of about 30 miles per hour, you can get into the situation where we're talking, 20 to 30 below. Once we get to about 30 below on the wind chill, we're staring down 10 minutes or less where you can get into hypothermia and skin damage from the cold here. So please know that, and please know that the cold alerts have changed this year. Matt Standards has talked about it. It's on 13 plus, WTHR.com. Extreme cold warnings are what you need to know about this year. And today's topic, snow squalls. Different than snowstorms, but I would argue very impactful. And unfortunately, we've seen over the last couple of decades, these things can be deadly because they're shorter in duration, usually 30 to 60 minutes, but they come up on people very quickly compared to snowstorms where we've been forecasting days out and they'll last for a day or more. Squalls are a different ball game completely, where you can be on the roadway and you're looking at blue sky, dry pavement, and then you get within a squall and voila, this is what you end up with here. Intense burst of heavy snow, 30 minutes to an hour, as we mentioned. Visibility can go to near whiteout conditions in a very short period of time, and the snow accumulates rapidly. These will occur along fronts or lake effect. And if you have our free app on your phone, even if you don't, the National Weather Service actually issues snow squall warnings. So if you're driving along the highway, you can be alerted to this. Just make sure that you have your phone set up to allow for those warnings. So know your environment before you head out in the winter months. Reduce your speed, don't slam on your brakes, turn on the headlights, allow extra time, and monitor the local forecast here. When we get into these Arctic fronts, that cold air comes racing in, similar to a cold front, and it lifts it up, creates the squall. That's one mechanism. The other is lake effect, and we see these sometimes, even in the central and eastern part of the state. These lake squalls can make it all the way down here.
Let's talk about some winter weather, especially when it comes to lake effect snow. I'm 13 News meteorologist Matt Standridge. There's a huge difference on what we see on average for snowfall across the state of Indiana. Barely a handful of inches close to the Ohio River, and then over 50, even over 60 inches once you get into northern Indiana, especially right around South Bend and LaPorte. You get close to Lake Michigan, you've got these intense lake effect snow bands, and we can easily get over 100 inches in some winters. So let's talk about how this process forms. We've got different air temperatures and different water temperatures. When we're going into winter, a lot of times the air is colder than the lake water still around Lake Michigan, several degrees actually. When we start to get a temperature difference about 23 degrees from the top of the water to about 5,000 feet up, you start the lake effect snow machine, you produce some snow, you carry it into parts of northern Indiana and sometimes into central Indiana. A lot of times even Indy or Richmond, Muncie, Newcastle can pick up a quick couple inches from some lake effect snow if it's robust enough. But you got the warm water. Colder air moves in from Canada, comes right over the Great Lakes. That cold air then warms up itself. You start an evaporation process. You take that warm water from the Great Lakes, you push it up, you make some clouds. If you're below that 23-degree difference threshold, you can get some clouds, but maybe not snow. But as soon as you hit that 23-degree difference, snow starts to form, and you carry it with that north wind right over the land, and we can get some big snows, sometimes 2 to 4 or 5 inch per hour snowfall rates. The blue areas show you all the lake effect snow belts, and we've got one here in northern Indiana. We count technically, especially once you get that north wind coming down the spine to pick up a lot of water. You can dump some big snow in the region and in Michiana, and some of it will carry south into central Indiana. If you get too much cold air, you'll form a lot of ice. Last time, 2014, and also 2022, we had a lot of ice on the lake, and that shut down the process. But lake effect snow, we get it here in Indiana.
This one's on your stopping distance and time as we get into winter when it involves changing pavement and what's going on with that pavement here. So when we, 30 miles per hour on ice, this is how much longer it would take compared to dry pavement. When you up your speeds to 50 miles per hour, you can see it takes significantly more time versus when the pavement is dry here. So we want to start thinking about that and can kind of make it into more of a time function here. On ice, 8 to 15 seconds to stop at 30 miles per hour. And then at 50 miles per hour, good luck. You're talking about like a half a minute. Now compare that to dry pavement. Makes all the difference in the world when we get into these situations here. So here's another way to look at it. When you start to apply those brakes on the dry pavement, about 100 to 170 feet versus wet pavement. Even wet pavement causes additional time to slow down at 35 miles per hour. And then when you get into the snow situation, and then ice is obviously going to be the worst here. It's going to take longer. And again, when you start to factor in a little bit higher speeds, so this is the time distance. 3 to 4 seconds on dry pavement at 35 miles per hour compared to 10 to 14 seconds. That's why ice is so dangerous. Now, as we talk about accumulating snow on pavement versus non-paved surfaces, it accumulates quicker on the grass versus the roads.
How many times have you gone close to your local bridge and you see that big orange yellow sign that says bridge ices before road? This is what it looks like a lot of times, especially the farther up the bridge is away from the ground, or whether it's a river or some sort of lake down below. Check this out. This is very common, especially in bigger terrain areas, where on the roadway during some sort of wintry system, and it doesn't have to be very heavy, the road may be just kind of wet as ground temperatures are just above freezing. But then check this out on the bridge. As soon as you get over kind of open air below, and then eventually maybe water or just a ravine, look at all that snow that piles up. And you can even see from this picture all the donuts and different kind of steering problems folks have had there on the bridge. But notice how it starts. It's a sharp line from the land and once you get to the bridge. So what's going on? Why does this happen? Why do we have those signs? Well, it has to do with the temperature of the road where you're on just the normal ground. Pavement's just right there smack dab with the soil, compared to the pavement there on a bridge. You're farther up. So when we've got these cold north winds coming by, we got to really watch road temperatures. Now, north winds can cool the temperatures, away from the bridge, and eventually they will, because you do see snow everywhere on some of our county roads across central Indiana. But if the temperature is a lot colder, notice how the bridge temperature can be way colder than it is away from the bridge. And even so, you may still have just water. It may not even be frozen over, but that icy, cold wind can really change things there on the bridge. And you can either have snow, or maybe you don't even really need snow. Maybe it could just be water, it could be freezing rain, and same thing could happen. But in a snowy situation, you've really got to watch those bridges as temperatures drop, especially below freezing. The air can go below the bridge and above the bridge to effectively cool it a lot faster. So make sure you stay safe on our county roads across central Indiana.
To talk about frozen pipes, unfortunately, I have some experience with this. I've had a couple of different homes that had frozen pipes, and it is the last thing you want to have happen. There's some things you can do to help prevent this. We're talking about when we get in situations where the air temperature, outside air temperature, gets into that 20 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. And you should know the makeup of your home. And what I mean by that, know which rooms have piping that's on the exterior of the home, because those will be the ones that will be more susceptible to getting frozen. And when that happens, when they freeze over, that ice expands and it will puncture the pipe. And I'm telling you through experience, it only takes a very small puncture. And then when the pipes unfreeze, that water just goes everywhere. And there's nothing worse than water damage. So what you want to consider: outside temperature, direct exposure, all right, and the effectiveness of how much wall insulation. Some things you can do. They're called pipe sleeves. Know where those are. Cover those pipes up. It's almost like putting an extra blanket on your bed. Turn up the heat in your home. Open up cabinets, because oftentimes those pipes can get frozen. And drip your water on the ones that you know are going to be near those walls that are a little more susceptible here. And those spigots, you want to certainly shut the water flow off to them, and you can get a spigot cover, and that can help out. So we're talking below 20 for at least 6 hours. That can cause some damage. Try to drain those outdoor pipes as well, something else to help out.
Cold season, of course, our snowy season, but to create this snow, you got to have a lot of clouds. It's also kind of depressing when things are just so gray across central Indiana, and we can get really gray here at home just because of the Great Lakes. Now, the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan touches northwest Indiana. We're close enough that when we get these strong north winds where there's a temperature difference from the lake water to the air above, and you create these clouds, those clouds can quickly sink into central and eastern Indiana, sometimes with a little bit of light snow at times too. But generally the bigger snows from the lake effect is farther to the north there in Michiana. But when it comes to cloudiness months of the year, December ranks first. Then we've got January, February, and March. November, as we get to Thanksgiving, we're starting to get into that top 5. But the cold months of the year are the coldest months of the year. Let's talk about January, and the same stat goes for December too. But December and January, 60% of the time, it's overcast. So we're talking about completely cloudy skies. Maybe a quick sun break, but that's it. Just very gray, 60% of the time, more than half the time. We're 20% of the time clear. So we do get some sunny days. They're a lot more rare. In between, you got a mix of sun and clouds, but over half the time, it is cloudy, and it's just really thanks to the Great Lakes producing extra clouds. Not everyone's cloudier in the winter by a huge margin, but we are by a big margin because you get these clouds form off the lakes, and then that north wind carries it right here in Indiana. Starting in northern Indiana with a little bit of snow, and then some flurries and extra clouds right here in central Indiana. So that also keeps our temperatures a little bit colder during the days because of all the extra gray skies. A little bit depressing. Once we get to April and May, the sun does come back out, and once we heat up, then we get into severe weather season. But in the meantime, it's our cold and cloudy season. Get ready for a lot of gray.
13 weather meteorologist Sean Ash back here. A little Weather Academy lesson today, precipitation types. And it really matters here when we get into our winter situation. What we want to temperature not only at the surface, but also in the middle levels of the atmosphere and the upper levels in the atmosphere. This is what a column of rain looks like. Usually starts as frozen precipitation, but the column is warm enough that it is liquid from the mid to lower levels of the atmosphere. Contrast that with the snow column that's frozen from top to bottom. Now, if we know it's going to be all rain and or all snow, those are easier forecasts compared to when we've got a warm layer in the middle levels of the atmosphere. And so what happens is it starts as snow, it melts, and then refreezes before contact. Those are the sleet pellets. The one that can really cause problems from a forecast standpoint and infrastructure standpoint is freezing rain. So it will basically start as snow, it melts, and then all of the surfaces down here are colder than freezing, power lines and sidewalks, and that rain freezes on contact. And that's what can cause the big problems. So again, this is what it looks like from a pure rain standpoint. We've got that above freezing layer much higher in the atmosphere compared to when we get that warm layer here when we talk about sleet. And then as we get into the freezing rain situation, that can become extremely problematic as it can weigh down trees, weigh down power lines, and in some cases, you know, it only takes a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of ice to cause power outages. Thanks again. We are going to talk about snow ratios and why that is important for us as forecasters here. First, we will talk about snow in general. You know, we have sometimes we'll be in a rain situation or maybe a freezing rain or sleet, but sometimes the atmosphere helps us out, and we know, okay, from the top to the bottom of the atmosphere is going to support snow only. When we get into those situations, then we have to figure out what will be what we call the liquid to snow ratio. Now, generally, not all the times, but generally that is a 10-to-1 ratio. And what we mean by that is if the modeling is showing anywhere from a 1/2 inch to say 7/10 of an inch of liquid, and we feel confident we're going to get that 10-to-1 ratio, that liquid would then produce 5 to 7 inches of snowfall here, okay? Now, sometimes we could be in a colder setup or a warmer setup. There's been a couple of events the last few years where we were in the 3-to-1 to 5-to-1 snow ratio. That does not happen a lot, but that can certainly bust up a snowfall forecast. Sometimes it might be a little bit more lift in the atmosphere to produce a higher ratio of 15-to-1. So then you take that 1/2 inch of liquid, that becomes 7 to 10 inches. And then in some cases, we may get into more of a 20-to-1 ratio here. Those are not too common, but that basically takes that liquid and really can fluff it up. Now, the last several winters have been very wimpy in central Indiana. We will see what this year brings. Here today, talk about nor'easters. Now, we don't obviously get them here in Indiana, but these can be some big troublemakers for travel here. Hence the name nor'easters. So typically going to be found from the winds coming from the northeast. These are going to be occurring between September and April within about 100 miles off the east coast. But that specific location can vary a little bit. But they can bring very high wind, very heavy snow, very heavy rain, and flooding to the New England coast and down into the mid-Atlantic. These can be some big storm systems here. And as we mentioned, they typically involve that strong northeast wind. We will get these areas of low pressure that will follow and bend with the jet stream, and they follow the Gulf Stream. So they're being energized by that warm Gulf Stream, and that can really intensify the low pressure system and enhance the strong northeast winds that occur. So these, again, during the winter months can be problematic. Now, we can also have lows that take a little more inland path, and you have more of a southwest wind. So that wouldn't necessarily be a northeaster. And then sometimes the jet configuration will push these storms, and they're big ones, but the way they're coming in has more of a southwest wind component versus a northeast wind component. So, but these are the storms that can be historic along the eastern and northeastern U.S., and that can produce some big-time snow events. A look at the polar vortex, which has been around forever. It's gotten a lot more play because of social media, and it's not only during the winter. The polar vortex is around all year long. It is at the north and south poles. It's weaker in the summer. It is stronger in the winter. And when it gets disrupted, that's when we can get the real cold air outbreaks farther to the south here. Okay, so the polar vortex, by the way, is about 10 to 30 miles above the surface. Okay, it is different than the polar jet stream, which is also important for us during the year. That polar jet stream, by the way, about 5 to 9 miles above the surface. And so as we get into the winter months, it can become a very key player for us. A stable vortex is a stronger area of low pressure. The cold air is contained to the north. We have a stronger west to east flow. And when that happens, typically, we call it zonal flow. We will be near, if not above, average in terms of temperatures here. Areas closer to the poles will be colder than average. All right, that's when we've got more of a strong vortex here. Now, sometimes we can get disruption and we get these lobes of cold air, depending on how everything else is stacking up. But that is when we can really get into the Arctic air diving to the south, and that's typically when we will get our coldest air outbreaks, when we get these disruptions in the polar vortex here. Extreme cold coming to the south.
Let's talk about some winter weather, especially white Christmases. I'm 13 News meteorologist Matt Standards. This shows you the map of the chance of having a white Christmas. Generally, the farther north you go, colder, better chances for some white powder there on Christmas Day, or the farther up you go in elevation. A lot of the Rocky Mountains have a better chance than even the Adirondacks because it's also colder up there. You catch some snow in the systems as they go by. But generally, you've got to be north of the Ohio River. So guess what? Indiana is in the chance. Not the biggest chance, but we've got a chance. You go south of Indy, a little bit more rare, about 10 to 25% of the time we can have a white Christmas. So it can go down about 1 every 10 Christmases. So not the great odds, but there are some odds. You get closer to Indy, central Indiana, much of north central Indiana, at least a quarter chance. So 1 out of every 4 Christmases or 1 out of every 3 Christmases, we can get them to be white. The threshold for this is 1 inch on Christmas Day. You can either get new snow powder there on Christmas Day to get that 1 inch, or you had lingering snow a couple days before and it held on for Christmas. It might got a little bit dirty, but hey, we'll count it. You get in northern Indiana, right around South Bend and Elkhart, LaPorte, Michigan City. You get into the lake effect snow belt where it's colder and you just have higher chances for snow. It's about 40 to 50% of the time they can have a white Christmas. So really got to go the farther north, you have a better chance. The cutoff there for about a quarter percent of the time, for white Christmases right around Greenwood and Martinsville, Connorsville, right on that edge. Let's talk about Indy though, specifically some of the stats. If we lower the threshold from 1 inch to just a trace, so snow flurries on Christmas Day or a few days before that kind of lasted with that trace, 44% of the time, so almost half the time, it's a little bit better. The biggest snow depth we had, this is a great Christmas, remember this one, 2004. We had 9 inches of snow there that you can measure. The max snowfall that we had on Christmas Day, just under 6 inches. Our last white Christmas we had was 2022, 1 inch of leftover snow.
Well, we are talking winter, and specifically we're talking about the winter solstice. Of course, we always remind you the reasons for the seasons is because of this 23.5-degree tilt in the Earth axis. This particular time of year, the northern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun. We're coming out of autumn, and then when we get into the summer months, that tilt is toward the sun. So that's the key for us. December 21st this year on the winter solstice. And again, the northern half of the continent is tilted away from the sun. On the 21st, that's when we get our shortest amount of daylight, and that is the longest night. It's just the opposite on the southern hemisphere here. So, and speaking of daylight, and we'll talk about that because that is key. Winter solstice we talked about on the 21st. Your sunset or sunrise is at 8:02, sunset at 5:22. That puts us at 9 hours and 21 minutes. By the first of the year, the amount of daylight will start to increase by 5 minutes. And then that progression will continue and expand to the point that we get toward March 8th. Our sunrise is at 7:06 and our sunset becomes 6:44 p.m., 11 hours and 38 minutes. One day after that, we will spring forward to daylight saving time, and that will change our sunrise to 8:05 and our sunset to 7:45, and the amount of daylight will continue to increase all the way into the summer solstice. Thanks for checking us out here at 13 Plus.